Hello, my name is Benjamin Bankhurst, and I'm a professor of history at Shepherd University.
And I'm Benjamin Pauly. I'm a professor of English at Eastern Connecticut State University. And we want to tell you a little bit today about a COPLAC Digital course called The Social Life of Books.
Books outlive their owners. This book, the book that Dr. Pauly has in his hand, will outlive both of us, and has indeed is of quite a vintage. It's 220 years old.
We tend not to pay too much attention to books as objects, as things. We tend to think of books as something that you read. But when you know how to look at a book, they tell their own stories in some pretty interesting ways. There's a lot of stuff we can find out about this book just by looking at how it was made. But for our purposes, really the most interesting things about this book aren't so much its contents, but the information about the people who have owned it at one time or another. When we look at the end of the book, we see something even more dramatic, just name after name after name, all from this Warren family. But when we look at the very end of this page, we see one last name inscribed in this book in a different handwriting and in pencil, and that's Mary Jane Warren. And you don't always find this sort of information in books, but as it turns out, I was able to locate, I think, this family in a genealogy published in the early 20th century. This is not an especially extraordinary book.
No.
But it can tell some pretty extraordinary stories when we know how to look at it.
But what this all seems to indicate is that this book has had a very active life. It's had a social life. It's passed through many hands over the generation.
When you pick up a book like this, you're actually touching the past. And it puts you in touch with other people who held the same book, the people who made it. We begin to get in touch with an entire world of readers just from one object like this. So what are you going to learn in a class like this one?
So one facet of this course is we're going to be using digital tools in order to bring the stories of these books to a wider audience. We'll be building a website and utilizing a WordPress page as a way of communicating these stories, usually lost on the shelves of libraries, and bringing them to a wider audience.
That's right. The bulk of your time will be spent in the archives where you are, either at your university or other archives in the area, trying to find books of interest and find the stories that they tell, and then figuring out how best to tell those stories using the tools that the digital medium makes available to us.
We're both very excited about this project, and we're looking forward to meeting new students interested in the fields of book history, but also interested in the history of their local areas.
We think that you actually stand to learn quite a lot from this class, but we also think it's going to be a lot of fun getting to know these stories from the past and getting to know students from other campuses. So we hope we'll see you in the spring.